Hi friends, welcome back to Nobody Knows podcast, dedicated to the ones who are still trying to figure it all out in life. If this is your first time listening, hello, and thanks so much for tuning in. I'm Juliana, and I am a 29-year-old who has consistently felt lost in life and like I've always been behind as I navigated my 20s. I created Nobody Knows to share my experiences and advice in hopes that we can relate to one another. We also have guests on here from time to time to spice things up with a different perspective, knowledge, and expertise of figuring it all out. If you have been loving this podcast, make sure you're following on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And lastly, I would love your feedback for Nobody Knows podcast, and the best way to show your support is either through a 5-star review on either listening platform or by writing to me directly on either Instagram at Nobody Knows Podcast or on TikTok at Nobody Knows Podcast, followed by an _. I hope you all are doing well, and I hope that you're enjoying your summer so far. I am struggling so much right now, though, to find some, I hate the term balance, but find some common ground between enjoying summer, but also feeling like a sane person and keeping up with the typical routine so that I get stuff done. It's a double-edged sword though, because there's only so months of summer here, at least in Ontario, and I feel like I definitely want to make the most of it all and say yes to everything, but doing that has caused me to break out. Like, my skin is shit right now. I'm running on 5 hours of sleep some days, which means I'm then dealing with some form of brain fog. I'm drinking coffee and not eating whole foods and full meals. It's just really been a little bit of a recipe for disaster. So I'm trying to find, like I said, that common ground and stick to certain habits, but also continuing to enjoy summer. And a few of them, for example, are going to Pilates and yoga. Pre-summer, I was going 5 to 6 times a week, and now I'm lucky if I get there once a week. Yoga and Pilates is great in terms of exercise, but it's also great for me because I check out from work or anything that's causing me stress. I can just move my body and focus on that. And another thing that makes me feel great both mentally and physically is eating whole foods and nourishing meals. But I'll tell you, the last thing I want to do lately is cook dinner. I have zero interest in cooking dinner lately. I think maybe because it's sunny out, summer, you don't want to be inside the house. Also, it's too hot to cook inside. I don't know. I just have zero interest to cook dinner lately. So what ends up happening then is I'll just order in and then I'll eat terribly. So Brendan and I have started doing these factor boxes. It's not necessarily chef's plate or good food where you get all the ingredients and then you make the dinner. It's one step further where you get pretty well-balanced meals, but they're in almost like a TV dinner type container, and then you just put them in the microwave and heat them up. But they're pretty good, pretty tasty, and they're just so easy. I just throw them in the microwave, and then 3 minutes later they're done and ready, and I can at least get in some good food, which also means now I have 0 excuses if I'm doing something after work to not eat well. Then the last thing I'm really trying to make a priority is taking my supplements. I forget these almost all the time because it's such a small part of my day, but they make such a big impact and make me feel really good and keep my digestion on track. And plus, the whole reason I am taking these to begin with is to help improve my skin. So I'm afraid if I stop doing these and stop taking them, then my skin is going to get back to being terrible again. I want to know from you though what your summer non-negotiables are. Are there any habits or products that you cannot live without right now that help keep you on a routine and make you feel like you're still in the groove of things? We have another guest episode coming at you today, and I need to share a personal win with you. At the beginning of the year, I set some goals on, the number of episodes I wanted to release and the amount of episodes that I wanted to include guests on. And at the same time, I set what I thought was a lofty goal of 6 individual people on their own respective episodes. But this episode will be our 7th this year featuring a guest, which I thought was pretty kick-ass. I've hit the goal and it's only halfway through the year. And you might think that that's not really a huge goal or not a lot of people, but what you don't see is all the behind the scenes work that it takes into featuring a guest on the show. So I'm pretty happy about that. Today we're chatting with Shaughnessy King. She is the founder of Success By Ness, an agency providing virtual executive business support. And she has certainly learned a lot about navigating life and business without having everything figured out. Like so many of us, Shaughnessy struggled with school, not necessarily from an academic standpoint, but more so in understanding what the right fit was for her. She realized that college would be more suited for her and received her early childhood education diploma and started her career. She navigated the corporate ladder until COVID inevitably forced everyone to stay home. When it was time to go back, she was not as eager, which I feel like a lot of people experience this, as she used to be, and recognized the changing work landscape. From there, she pivoted and used her transferable skills from ECE to land several part-time virtual assisting positions. It's here she realized the value and efficiency of fractional work and what inevitably led her to running her own virtual assistant business from all over the globe. In this episode, we're reflecting on how struggling to find your path in school can best prepare you for a successful career, what actually the virtual assisting role consists of, defining who is the right fit for a virtual assistant position and the many specialties that require VA work, the benefits of fractional work, and the full scoop on how Shaughnessy secured her and her family a temporary residency in Mexico and is now working from practically the beach. Thanks so much, Shaughnessy, for joining us today. I'm super, super excited. I know listeners are going to be excited as well to hear how you've navigated your career within the virtual assisting industry, as well as just like navigating your life. You have a really interesting story, so I'm really excited to have you on today. How are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I love doing these sessions on Saturdays because it's like I get to take time away from my 9 to 5 and actually focus on the
Love
guests,
that.
so
Yeah,
you, which is really great. So I've been looking forward to this all week.
that's exciting. I'm happy to be here.
So we always start each episode off with a question that sort of tells us what you're figuring out. So it's anything that you're currently figuring out right now. So this could be big, it could be small, it could be related to what we're going to talk about today, or it can be personal. So what are you figuring out right
Ooh,
now?
this is a good one. I'm in like a hectic time of life.
Yeah.
I am currently figuring out how to run a virtual assistant agency while also living abroad. So
Mm-hmm.
currently in Playa del Carmen, Mexico, originally from Toronto, Ontario, Canada. So just juggling all the things with
Yeah.
like my business, but also like my family and travel.
Yeah, that's a lot.
It
Like,
is a lot.
it's kind of like you were thinking go big or go home, I
Yeah,
feel
I'm
like
doing
when
all the things. Yeah, pretty much. Just like
that's, I
2024 was
mean,
supposed to be my year of like relax, and
yeah.
it's not. Yeah,
Well, they
went
were
the
like
total opposite.
they had other plans. Yeah.
Yeah,
You were
exactly.
like your January self was like, yeah, it's gonna be so relaxing, and then just future self was like, nice
Yeah,
try.
okay.
I
Haha.
lo- I love that. So we'll get into you living abroad a little bit later because I also think that that's so
Yep.
interesting. And I mean, we've talked about this in our initial time together. I would love to figure out how to live abroad and like work still and actually make an income and like
Yeah.
reap the benefits of just working from anywhere. So we'll get into that a little bit later. But first, I want to start off with you and like your origin story. So, can you share with listeners your background and how you became familiar with virtual assisting?
Yeah, so my background is actually in early childhood education. So I went to school for my ECE probably like 10 years ago by now. It took me a very long time to finish it because like I originally went to school thinking I wanted to be a teacher, then went to university and wasn't good at it, hated it, dropped out, went to school for ECE, also dropped out of that, moved to Toronto, and then was like, oh, I guess I should finish this diploma at some point. So like
Yeah.
my then boyfriend, who's now husband, was like, yeah, you should finish it, like get it done. And so he encouraged me and I finally got it done. And I worked in the field for like, I don't know, 5 years. Worked my way up from like the classroom all the way to a childcare center director. And then COVID happened and I had my daughter and then I was just like, like I'm not going back to that. Like I need to find something else
Hmm.
to do. And so my husband was like, oh, you should be a virtual assistant. And I was like, I don't even know what that is. Like nobody does that. That's not a
Yeah.
thing.
I
But
feel
like
like that role when you first hear about it, it's like in movies.
where my husband got the idea, he read The 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss, and Tim Ferriss talks about like how he has virtual assistants in like abroad and like overseas, and he
Yeah.
pays them like $4. And I was like, well, you can't live in Canada off of $4 an hour, so
Yeah.
like don't really know how that works. And so I like kind of just started dabbling in like finding admin work because I was like, okay, like as a childcare center director, like there's a lot of administrative tasks and like managing parents and, managing the kids and all these different things. And so I was like, I have a lot of skills that kind of fall under that administrative umbrella. And so I was like, let me try and find like some sort of admin work. It doesn't have to be remote. It can be in office. It's fine. Like after that point, COVID kind of settled. So I was like, you know what? Like I can probably get away with like an office job. As everybody knows, ECEs don't get paid a lot of money. So it's pretty much the same to like work in an office as it is to like take care of people's children. It's like the same rate of pay. So I was like, you know what, let me find a way to do that. But I couldn't find anything that I was quite fitting what I was looking for. And so I kind of pivoted and I just started looking for like part-time administrative work. So like I was like, if I could just piece together like two people who both need part-time admin support and like maybe do it remotely, then I can, bring a little bit of income in and like replace my maternity leave income and then like build from there. And so that's what I did. I found a marketing company who was looking for admin support. And then I went with like a virtual assistant agency. And so together I was able to like kind of pay my bills and just kind of coast my way into like the virtual assistant world, so to speak.
First off, I had a question about when you were in ECE and you said you're kind of like, okay, well, I feel like I should like get a diploma and like sort of see this through. Did you always have like a knowing of like, I'm not like the most passionate about it, but like I kind of already started going to school.
I was very passionate about it. It was just like a bad time in my life. Like I needed to move to a new city. And it's funny enough, I ended up finishing my diploma online. I was in an online program. So like, I'm just like all up in the online space from
digital.
The get-go. Yeah. I was one of the very first students at Loyalist College to like do online before online schooling was even popular. You still had to do like your placements in person, obviously, because like you can't like virtually take care of children. But for me, right? If only. For me, it kind of like opened up the space to like have more knowledge of like working on computers and stuff like that. Hindsight is 2020 though, because like when I was in high school, like I did make sure to take like all the business courses and like learn Mac, learn PC. Like I learned all of that like in my teen years, because like back then it was like kind of when computers were getting like more mandatory in school. And so in hindsight, I'm like, oh, that actually benefited me back then, because now I'm using those skills like years later in my business. I didn't foresee that like I would be out of the childcare field. It just kind of like, it was just the right time, the right place at the right time kind of thing. Like I think if COVID didn't happen, maybe I wouldn't be where I am right now.
And building off of that, like when you were struggling in school and sort of just like having to get yourself to the finish line to just get that diploma, how do you think that those challenges shaped your perspective on education and then furthermore your overall career path and that big pivot that you made?
Yeah, this is like I'm a funny one, because I just now realize that I know so many people, including my own husband, who like never did post-secondary, but like have like gone on to do so many successful things with their life. Like I have a lot of friends, same thing, like family members who like never really finished post-secondary or finished post-secondary, but like are completely not doing the thing that they went to school for. Like that is so common now that like nobody really does the work that they do now in life, or like it's nothing to do with what they went to school for. And I applaud people for that, for like being able to like be so successful even though they're not particularly like within that workspace. So for me, it definitely like, I think it just paved the way for something to be different. Like I was very flexible and open with whatever happens. I don't know. Like in my head when I went to school, like I totally thought like, yeah, I'm going to work my way. And I did. I literally worked my way from like the infant classroom all the way to like running the staff as a childcare center director. Like I was the boss of the center, right? So like I did work my way to that point, and like it was good. I made lots of friends. I like had lots of experiences and lots of challenges, like any type of career. But yeah, I think it definitely like helped pave the way to like get to where I am now.
I feel like I have done a lot of education, and I'm on the same side of the coin though, where it's like, is it worth it? Like, do I need to do all of this education, or could I have just figured out an easier way to do it? And like, you're right, hindsight is 2020. I probably could have found an easier way to do things to get to where I am right now. But at the time I was like, you know what, I'll just try it out. And I don't think that any type of education is bad. Like you're going to learn something from it. But I also agree, you don't have to do education to get far in life or become successful or achieve your goals.
Yeah, I agree.
As we mentioned, everyone has heard of like the term virtual assistant or like that job, but I don't really think everyone's like quite aware of what the position actually consists of. I also was not of that before we chatted initially. So, can you describe the roles and responsibilities of a virtual assistant and the type of person that you would think would be the most suitable for this type of role?
Yeah, so virtual assistant is somebody who provides support virtually. So the most common one, like in my business, for instance, is providing administrative support. So checking emails for clients, scheduling meetings, sometimes attending meetings. But it can also be things like graphic design or copywriting. So a lot of that, when we say virtual, it just means that like we're doing it remotely from like our
Mm-hmm.
computer in our own space. We're not coming into your office. We're not coming into like your, and then the other part of that is like we work for ourselves. So we're self-employed. You might also hear the term like freelancer.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
that just means like we work for ourselves. We are independently contracted to do the work for you. And it's normally like on a part-time basis. So I normally just tell people like I do part-time administrative support. It's like the easiest way to like people understand.
Right. Yeah.
So a lot of the times people need support in their business and like they automatically think they need to like go to Indeed or LinkedIn and post like a whole job posting. And they're like, oh, I can't afford to bring on somebody to help me with all these emails that I have piling up or to clear
Yeah.
out my inbox or to like write social media captions for me or whatever.
Right.
But like they never think of it in like a part-time aspect or like you had also mentioned like a
Right.
fractional aspect because like
Yeah.
fractional is a very common like for corporate CEO type
Yeah.
term. But it just means that like you could get somebody to help you, but they don't need to be full time. And it comes at
Right.
a fraction of the cost, right? So a lot of the times, especially if you're a small business or you're a solopreneur, like maybe you realize like the next step is to like bring in a VA or somebody to help you with some of those emails or just scheduling out work for your clients. But you can't afford to bring on like a full-time person. Like you're already barely affording to pay yourself. How could you pay
Yeah.
somebody like $50,000, $60,000 salary?
Yeah.
You don't have to do that. You can just bring somebody on part-time and it maybe only costs you a couple $100s or $1,000 a month, which is like
Right.
substantially cheaper, but offers you the same level of support that you might need at the early stage of your business.
Mm-hmm.
And then some of the skill sets that you might need if you want to be a virtual assistant, a big one is like if you're organized, an organizational aspect is very important. So somebody who can pay attention to details. You know, when you're responding on behalf of the client, you want to be as professional as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are like some key elements that are like very important because I think it's very common. People are like, oh, be a virtual assistant as like a side hustle or whatever. And,
Yeah.
you know, if you're not really detail oriented, it's not like the
Yeah.
best fit for everyone.
So fair.
I think it's very important for like, if you are looking for a VA to bring onto your team, like I think it's important to like find somebody who has some sort of skills and background in that. So like, sure, I didn't go to school for like administrative whatever you can go to school, business
Yeah.
management or whatever you
Yeah.
can go to school for where they'd focus on that. But like I have worked with emails, I have worked with, you know, HR, scheduling,
Mm-hmm.
hiring, interviewing. So like all of those things are things that like in turn I was able to pivot and use to my advantage to become a virtual assistant. So I think it's very important when people are looking for a virtual assistant to kind of understand the background or the experience that the VA has before you like hire them.
I was really interested too in our initial time. You said that you could really have a virtual assistant for like any specialty, and you had touched on a few in that previous response. But like, is there any stories that you've heard of someone virtual assisting for like a really out there niche or like specific industry that you're like even surprised you, where you're like, I didn't even think that someone would need a virtual assistant for that, but hey,
Oh
here we
yeah, so
are.
there's two. So niche is like a very popular word as well in like the virtual
Yeah.
assistant online space. As a virtual assistant, like we pivot into two ways to have a niche. So like one is like a niche based on the skills you provide. So like web design, graphic design, social media,
Cool.
admin. But then niche can also be like the type of clients you serve. So like
Mm-hmm.
I only serve nutritionists, I only serve coaches, I only serve lawyers, that kind of thing. So there's definitely like two varying types of niches.
Mm-hmm.
And I've worked in like I've had clients of all different types, like DEI, law, nutrition, finance. So like there's definitely a lot of different niches in terms of client work, but then it also in terms of like the type of work that you can provide. So like web design is a really like
Mm-hmm.
unique one that like you really need to have like a very specific skill
A
set.
set of skills. Yeah.
Yeah, and so a lot of the times too, people start off as a VA, and a lot of people start off as like a general VA, we call them. Like they dabble in a little bit of everything, and then over time, a lot of the times they pivot into something else. They realize they really like the social media part, or they really like I really like the back end of websites. Like that is not me. Like I tried a few different things. Like I did try graphic design and I did work for marketing agencies where I did do other things. And I quickly learned that like admin is my niche. It's like what I stick with and what I'm good at. Which I think kind of sets me apart in a sense, because a lot of the times people are so busy, they start off as admin and then everybody pivots to something else, that it doesn't really
Right.
leave a lot of people who do just do admin. And
Yeah.
so now it's funny because people will come to me and they're like, "Oh, do you do social media?" And I'm like, "No, absolutely, I do not.
Yeah.
I only do admin." So like,
Yeah.
I find now it's like a lot easier to me to bring on those clients because they're just looking for a specific thing, and I just
Yeah.
provide that, and then they're not getting all confused with like, "Oh, I need this, I need that." It's like, no, this is like a straightforward focus.
Hmm.
Um, so there's definitely a lot of different niches and a lot of different creative sides that people have in the VA space, as well as like the types of clients that we have.
I think it's also really great that you are so sure of like what you can offer and what you don't offer. It's almost like a good like relationship fit, especially if you are managing like if you're going to be doing VA work like from a part-time perspective, you're obviously going to be doing other jobs at the same time. So if you were like overextending yourself or like going out of like what you're usually comfortable with, I feel like that get very chaotic quickly while
It
also
does.
managing other jobs.
It does. It does. And I do think it's good for people who are starting out as a VA to try it and see. Like I
Hmm.
also did, like I tried that graphic design and yeah, it ended up being terrible because I was like, I don't like this at all. Like I was like, this is not for me. And then I had to like have that awkward conversation with the client being like, okay, like this isn't a good fit. Like I think we should find someone else. I'm going to part ways, you know?
Hmm.
But I also think it's important to like stick with what you know you're good at. So like that for me, I like was everyone was always like, oh, like as you build your agency, like will you provide, social media and like because that's another thing. There's like two different types to people. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
as they build an agency. Some people are like they're an all in one agency where they provide the copywriting, the graphic design,
Hmm.
the admin, the everything. And I was like, listen, like when I'm scaling to my agency, I still only want to provide admin support because that's what I'm good at. And then I can
Yeah.
at least make sure that like the people who are on my team are doing a good job because I brought them on and I'm an expert in that,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
That's
That's
also
really
very
fair.
common is like people will have an agency, but then they're like a Jack or Jane of all trades. Like they offer everything. And it's
Yeah.
like, for some people, that's great because some people do need a little bit of all of that in their business. But for me, I was like, stick with what you know and it will like
Hmm.
be amazing. And that's
Yeah.
why it's amazing.
And I'm really interested of how like it's almost like setting boundaries of like this is what I can do and what I don't, and like also honoring your skill set. So I'm interested to know, I assume there is quite a big demand for people that just need like admin services or a specific niche, as you said, of skills. But it's kind of hard to wrap my head around of people like actually wanting to pay for like administrative services, and that's probably just like my own ignorance. But I also have worked in companies where it's like they don't want to fork out money. Like there, some people are really cheap, and
Yeah.
they don't realize that that's exactly what they need. So
Yeah.
I want to know of like your success stories of like working with companies who actually realize, hey, we need this and have
Yeah.
reached out
It's
to
a
you and used
hard
your
one.
services.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a hard dynamic. They have to come to me ready to go.
Okay.
And like I normally say it's like they're normally at the point where like they're drowning because they just like can't do it all anymore.
Yeah. And you're
Um,
like, told you so.
yeah, yeah. So if
Yeah.
you feel like you're drowning, come to me. I can help you. But yeah, I think it's really like a mentality thing for them. Like they really need to like realize that this is whatever they've been doing is not working. And so a lot of the times like it needs to be like a reality check for them. So like I always
Right.
remind them like or like I always say like even on my social posts, I'm like if you feel like you get your clients because they come in through an inquiry of some sort, like maybe you have like a contact page on your website and like they fill it in and like you need to then schedule a call with them so that they can eventually turn into a client. But like if you're missing those emails and you're not responding within like 12 to
Yeah.
48 hours, it's like a suitable time for any business to respond to an inquiry. If you're not responding to that because you're too busy doing your actual, like, whatever, maybe you're a photographer, so you're editing the photos and
Yeah.
doing the shoots, but like you're missing out on a potential client because you're not responding. So it's almost like by not having a VA, you're losing money in a sense because like you
Yeah.
can't keep up with it all. Nobody tells you when you start your own business and you're like a solopreneur, whatever you want to call yourself, nobody tells you how freaking hard it is to wear all the hats, because you have to wear all the hats. And so you're there trying to do the accounting and the bookkeeping and the scheduling, and then you're also trying to do whatever it is that was actually your passion that you started in the first place, whatever your business is. You can't even be fully involved in that now because it's grown so much, but like you didn't think about what was going to happen after you grew so much that like you can't control it all. In the beginning, it's good. You know, you can, oh, hey, I'll just respond to this email. And like, then you find yourself like working evenings and weekends, and it's like you can't even enjoy time with your family or your loved ones or your friends or your pets or whatever. You can't enjoy that time because you're working nonstop now. So like I sometimes have to remind people that yes, it's going to cost you a little bit of money in the beginning. And like, I also remind people it's not going to cost you thousands of dollars to start. Like you can start with 10 hours a month. And like that's a lot. That's about 30 minutes a day. So if you have your VA go in there for 30 minutes a day, and maybe you don't even have a lot of inquiries, so it's not complicated. Maybe they just do 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes in the afternoon, checking your emails, responding on your behalf, being like, hey, client, yes, customer, I can arrange this. Let's schedule a meeting with you and the client, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
That is costing you a couple $100s a month. But when you book just one client, if your client is like thousands of dollars, that could make or break you, like being able to pay your bills, like run your life like normal and not being in the negative, right? So I think I kind of have to remind them of like the benefit to it all. And I find that happens more so with like smaller, like I said, solopreneurs, like they've been running it on their own for a bit and like they're trying to juggle all the things. And I just need to kind of remind them like, yeah, it may seem like a little bit of money to you and it might seem like a lot to them depending on like the type of business they have, but I have to remind them that like you're getting your time back and therefore you're also going to get your passion back. You're going to get like some of your life back. So yeah, it's a hard dynamic, but they need to be wanting to need to that support and like wanting to let go. We start with like baby steps, like, okay, like you tell me what you want. We'll kind of shadow them for like the first week or so that they can we can figure out how things work in their mind and like replicate it so that it's not so overwhelming for them.
Do you find you get a mix of clients where it's like they've initially reached out wanting your services and then they sort of back off because they're still not ready, so you have to like follow up with them months down the line?
Yeah, that's so funny. That like just happened to me. Like, and I think it's just because it's summer now, so everyone's kind of like, I'm just chilling. But like sometimes you'll get people who are like, I just want to organize some things before I bring the VA on.
Oh my gosh, clean up the mess. It's
yeah,
like when you have a housekeeper come over.
Exactly. You're like tidy up a little before the cleaner comes. It's the exact same, but I'm always like, is this realistic? Like, is it realistic that you're actually going to tidy things up before the VA comes on? Yes or no? If you think it is and you're going to block off the time for the next 2 weeks, you're going to sort some things out so that when the VA comes, you're ready to go, then sure, I can give you 2 weeks. We'll sign the contracts and set a new date. But I'm like, if you don't think that's realistic, then like you may as well just bring the VA on and just tell them what you want and they will just do it for you. And then you can just relax.
That's so fair. That's really funny.
Yeah, it happens all the time.
So as I mentioned, as we discussed, fractional work, which is described a work arrangement where an individual provides specialized skills or management services to multiple organizations on a part-time or project basis. So that is, like you said, becoming more and more like the corporate lingo, especially after COVID and with the workforce moving more digital or like to a virtual landscape. Why do you advocate for fractional work or part-time work? And how do you envision the virtual assisting industry evolving in the coming years?
Love to advocate for it because I think it can still provide so much value without like eating away at part of your business. Because like the biggest thing with business and business owners is like, you know, profit or, you know, being able to be successful and like not running into debt when running your business. And by having that fractional option, it allows you to still scale your business, grow your business, hit those revenue goals, but like get that support that you need that will then boost your success and boost your business in a sense that like it provides you with a great value for like a reasonable cost. And then I would say for the virtual space, I know everyone always asks like, oh, how is the virtual space now that like AI is taking over and stuff like that, right? ChatGPT can like never replace us because ChatGPT is just like not smart enough.
Yeah.
Like AI is great, but like, and we use it as a tool within our own like virtual assistant spaces. Like we
Hmm.
might, you know, use it to answer a question or like, and it's funny because like now that I've built an agency where I have other VAs who are working with me, like I now have to like hire VAs to come work with me. And like there are VAs who are using ChatGPT to like apply to be a VA with me. And I'm just like, no, I still want you to use your brain. AI is not going to take over completely because like I for one like love to work with people who like to
Right.
use their brain.
Yeah.
So like we
That's
need to
such a
use
funny statement. I love
but
it. It's
like
so
we
funny.
need to
Yeah.
use AI as an
Yeah.
assistant, not as
Yeah.
like the be all and end all. And so I do think that like we can use AI to support us in our businesses,
Hmm.
but not to like take over our businesses. And AI is just
That's fair.
not at the level that we think it is. Like we always talk
Yeah.
about like AI is taking all the jobs and like this and that, but like there's always glitches and there's just certain things like yeah, it's good like if you need a prompt for something, like AI
Hmm.
is good for that. And it's good to help with like, you know, speeding up processes and stuff, but at the same time, like I do think the virtual assistant space is great because people still want people who are personable. And like when people come
Yeah.
to me and they pick me and my team, they pick me based on like things like personality and experience and skill set, et cetera. And like that comes from building a rapport by having a virtual, we're not meeting in person, but like a virtual conversation with them. And AI can't do that. AI doesn't have the same personality that I have. And so I do think that like AI is great and it's helpful, but the virtual assistant space will like continue on. And it's funny because people will also say like, oh, how can you as a VA in like North America, as an example, like how can we compete with like people who are in Southeast Asia where they charge like a third of the price because like their cost of living is less and so they don't charge as much. But like for me specifically, like my one selling feature is because I provide admin support, the clients that we work with, they want somebody who's available between like
There
business
you
hours, 9
yeah.
a.m. to 5 p.m. Like, and that, you know, depending on the time zone, like I'm in Eastern time zone, but like give or take an hour plus or minus, like, you know,
Hmm.
we have some clients who are in different provinces or different states. So like their time zone is maybe like an hour different or 2 hours different. But like that is one thing that like my business prides itself in is like we provide admin support, but like we're providing it to people who are like within the same time zone as us and like we work within the same time zone. So like they never have to worry about like the VA not being available because it's 2 a.m. their time, but like it's 2 p.m. our time, right? So that's also something that like people are often like, how do we compete with them? And I'm like, they're not on the same level that I am. They're not providing what
Yeah.
I'm providing, right? So like every VA is uniquely different and it's entirely up to the client whether they choose me or somebody else at the end of the day. But that's
Hmm.
also something that like is very, I think will like never be an issue. There's the people who
Right.
want to pay $2 for their VA, like that's cool. For me, I want to be able to provide my VAs with like a living wage within North America
Yep.
and somebody who wants to work with me. And this is common. People will ask, like, where are you located? And I'm like, oh, Toronto, like GTA, originally from Toronto, now in Mexico, that kind of thing. So
Hmm.
people do ask because they do want to know, like, is my VA local or not? So that's
Right.
also something that's like some people think about. For some people, it's not important, but to a lot of people, it's very important.
Can you, from the virtual assistant's point of view, also highlight the perks of the job and
Mm-hmm.
why you love it so much?
Yeah, lots of perks. And like the number one thing is like, you know, digital nomad. Everybody wants
Yeah.
to be a digital nomad working from the beach, but like are not actually working from the beach because like the beach is where you enjoy the beach and like it gets
Yeah.
the laptop gets hot, there's sand everywhere. Like
I was gonna say there's sand
that's not a real
everywhere.
thing. I went to a beach club for the first time last week and I was like, why would anybody want to work from here? Like even with the
Yeah.
tables and the chairs, I'm like, you can't see the screen. The sun is too bright.
Yeah.
So you can be a digital nomad all you want, but you're not actually working from the beach. Yeah, a big one is like travel and flexibility and just having the opportunity to like work when you want, where you want,
Hmm.
obviously within reason. So like for instance, I say like for my business, like we work within the hours of 9 to 5.
Yeah.
If you're doing something like graphic design or web design, like you have a lot more flexibility because it's not on a set time. Like you
Hmm.
can, you know, if you want to do the graphic designs at 2 a.m., it's fine
Go
as long as you
off.
meet
Yeah.
your deadline, right? So definitely like the flexibility is a big one. Like it's very common for, you know, stay-at-home parents. They want to be able to like drop their kids off to and from school, or people who want to travel a lot. They can, you know, work from anywhere or they can, you know, travel to different countries. So I definitely think flexibility is a big one. I also personally love it because I could travel When I first started it, it was because of COVID. I wanted to find a way that like if the world shut down again and I had to like take care of my family, like how would I do it?
Yeah.
Or like I had a small child, so like I was like, if daycare closes again and like there's no childcare, I was like, how am I gonna bring in some money? And so it's worked out. We never had a lockdown after that, but like if my
Hmm.
daughter's ever sick, like I can still work and have her at home just lounging with me, and
Right.
it's like totally workable. So that's definitely like big perks.
Hmm. Yeah, and I want to dive in more to now of you like living abroad because it's a perfect segue.
Hmm.
So, as you mentioned, you just said you have like such freedom to, be wherever you are, but still be able to work, have the perks of having your daughter with you and your family. Can you share more about this journey of living abroad and how you even figured out how to do this? You sort of hinted with just after COVID or during COVID, but I'd love to hear more about this.
Yeah. So in 2022, my husband had a friend who was like, I'm moving abroad. And we were like, oh, okay, cool. And the guy moved to Mexico, and then it planted a seed in my husband's brain. And he was like, yeah, we're going to do that one day. And so he was like, this is totally possible because you work remote. So like you can work from anywhere. And so I was like, okay. So his friend had gone to Mexico. So we were like, okay, let's try to go to Mexico. So we flew from Toronto to Playa del Carmen, Mexico. And we were here for 3 or 4 months, and I hated it. Like I worked remote, but like it was the first time I would ever lived abroad from like long term. Like I have traveled
Yeah.
from Canada to many different countries, like across the world, and like it's fine for two
Yeah.
weeks, but this was like living in a different country that I
Hmm.
chose to move to, and
Yeah.
just like adjusting to like the lifestyles was different, and like I was just so used to the way
Totally.
things ran in Canada, and like everything is so smooth. You're used to your life the way it is. And it was just like, oh, I was like, I hate this. And I was like, let's go back to Canada. Like, I just want to go back to like my regular life, go back to our house and call it a day.
Hmm.
But then we realized that like we hated the winters after
Yeah.
so we had left like halfway through the winter, and it was January when we left. So it was like so nice to like come back, and it was warm weather. And then when like the winter hit again, we were like, this is terrible. Like
Hmm.
this
Yeah.
sucks. And so we decided the year after that, we decided to go to Southeast Asia because my husband had always wanted to go to Thailand.
Hmm.
And I was like, okay, I was like, let's try this again. But then some of my clients were like, oh, like the time difference is too much. Like it's 12 hours time difference. And so they were like, we don't think that's a good idea. And so I ended up basically stopping work, and we went to Thailand, Vietnam, and Bali, Indonesia for 6 months. And I did not work that time. So we just lived off of savings. And that was good. But again, it was like so far from family. It was like my first time ever being away for a Christmas, and like I hated it. And I was like, oh, I was like, I like the idea of being away for the winters, but I was like, one, I need to work because I was like, the idea of like just my savings dissipating like stressed me out.
Yeah.
And so I was like, you know what? I was like, let's just go back to Canada after the 6 months. And I was like, we can reconfigure. And I was like, we should just focus on Mexico because like it's familiar. I want to try it again. It's close to Canada. We can come
Hmm.
back when we need to. And we can either try a whole year or we can just try 6 months. But I was like, let's try and get the temporary residency, and then we can come
Yeah.
and go whenever we want. So it's very common for like snowbirds, the Canadians and Americans who like
Yeah.
only come to Mexico for the winter. So we basically just started planning that whole thing out. And so this year in April, we moved to Mexico. So we sold almost everything. We still have our house in Toronto that we rent out.
Hmm.
But we sold, I was like, this time we're going as if we're never coming back. Cause I was like, if I have the option to come back, I will just come back. And then it'll just like, it's a whole thing all over again to like
Yeah.
come back and like find everything again. So I was
So
like, you know
fair.
what? I was like, we're just going to work remote. And like this way, it's not a big deal because it's the same time zone. Everything will be good. It's familiar. And so we came here, and this time around, I'm loving it. It's great. I'm
Hmm.
like
It's great.
socializing, making new friends.
Oh, that's so
Um,
fun.
our daughter like goes to school, like goes to daycare here, and she now is learning Spanish. And so she
That's
loves it.
amazing.
My husband's just like coasting with his savings, and I get to still work. So like my savings
Yeah.
don't dissipate, and like my mental health is fine.
Yeah. Yeah, so you get like both benefits. So, like
Yeah,
you get to enjoy this
exactly.
new place, but you're also like not stressed because like that's not
Exactly.
great.
Yeah, exactly. And so now I'm just like, okay, well, while we're in Mexico, so we decided to stay for a year. We got our temporary residency, which that just
Hmm.
means that like we can come and go to Mexico without being tourists.
Okay.
So we still have like our Canadian passports, Canadian citizenship, but we have temporary residency in Mexico that's valid for a year, and that we can extend it again next year.
Okay.
And this way we've just decided that like we should just explore Mexico because like we're on like the
Mm-hmm.
very southern tip by like if you know Tulum and Cancun, we're like halfway in between there. So like very like southern Caribbean beach city, like
Mm-hmm.
pretty cool. But I'm like Mexico has is so big and just has so many
Yeah.
different like coasts and so there's Mexico City that's like I'm dying to get to Mexico City because I think it's very similar to Toronto and like big city vibes, lots of different food and restaurants and stuff.
Right.
So I'm like, now we're here. I'm like, we need to explore Mexico more because I'm like, who
Yeah.
knows what we'll do like a year from now if we'll still be here back in Canada. Like, we're very fluid.
Right.
And I think
I
I
love
have that
that.
option because I work remote. So it allows me to kind of go where I want, when I want.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's what we're up to currently. And it's been
I
great.
love that. It's so cool. Like I want to be
It's a
you.
lot. It's a lot of
Like
work.
that's
And I
yeah.
do have days where I'm like, this sucks. I hate this.
Yeah.
Like, I want to go
Yeah.
back to Canada.
Can you highlight how you
Mhm.
secured it's a temporary residency, is that
Residency.
correct?
Yes, yeah. So with Mexico, you can basically show 6 months worth of income, and
Okay.
then based on it has like a certain dollar amount, and like it goes up every
Okay.
year. So it's like it's a lot now. It changes every January 1st. So like it's probably
Okay.
like over $6,000 Canadian a month. So you basically need to show that you have that income in your bank account for 6 months straight. And then you can book an appointment at the consulate, and then they will give you like a stamp in your passport. And then you
Mm,
have to come to Mexico and finish the process where they basically like review that stamp, you fill in a bunch of forms, and then they literally give you a card that's like
oh,
your temporary residency. So we have that. That's valid for 1 year. And then after that year is up, you can renew it for 4 more years. And then after those 5 years total is up, you get permanent residency.
wow.
So like you can't like vote or anything, but like you can apply for like a work permit, and you can
Mm-hmm.
come and go as a resident instead of coming as a tourist. Because if you come as a tourist, you can only stay for up to 180 days. So a lot of people come when they go to Mexico, they go on vacation for a week, no big deal. They come, they
Mm-hmm.
go, it's good to go. But for people who want to stay here longer, it's beneficial to have that residency because it just makes it easier to come in and out of
Yeah,
like customs and stuff.
totally. And how long would you say that it took you to go through that entire process?
We started planning it out basically July of last year, so July 2023. And then my
Okay.
husband basically worked from July until December and like made sure that he had that much income. Back then it was like 5,000 something a month
Right.
that you needed to
Okay.
show. So he basically worked the last 6 months of the year last year and like had all those bank statements so that at the end of December he could get to the consulate and like show them that paperwork. A lot of other people who are older who are retired, they use
Mm-hmm.
you can also show like 12 months of investment income. So like
Mm,
if you have your RRSP, RESP, or 401k if
yeah.
you're American,
Yeah.
if you have that, and like obviously when you're old, you have like way more money in your investment account. So if you have like over $100,000, which is like if you're 65, you have way more than that most likely.
Yeah.
You can just show 12 months of your investment accounts, and then that's how a lot of like the seniors who are like
Got it.
snowbirds, that's how they do it, so that they don't have to like go back and forth, go back and forth.
Right.
And then post COVID, because there were so many people who fled from different countries during COVID and came to Mexico, and a lot of them, their tourist visas expired and they couldn't leave Mexico because everybody was like locked down.
Oh my
So
gosh.
in after 2020, the Mexican government actually allowed people who had come prior to 2022, if you had a stamp in your passport, you can automatically get 4 years of temporary or permanent residency, basically,
Wow.
because you basically couldn't leave the country. And so they were like trying
Mm-hmm.
to incentivize those people to stay by offering them residency. So you don't even have to show solvency for that. You can just be like, yeah, I was in Mexico for this time to this time. And
Mm-hmm.
they'll be like, okay, no problem. As long as it's expired, you can apply and then they'll grant you that residency. So they've been
Wow.
like, at least been a little more understanding to a lot of people who have been like coming and going in the last few years. And I think it was just a way for them to like boost residency.
Yeah. That's so interesting. I've thought about the idea of like working somewhere else and I've
Hmm.
talked to my partner about it, but I've never actually thought about the actual steps that go into it. So that's so
Yeah, it's a
cool.
lot. So like in my
Yeah.
husband's ideal world, we'd be in Thailand because he just like Thailand was great.
Loves
Like I
it.
loved it.
Yeah.
But like their biggest flaw was like they're primarily their residency or like long-term visas were for like elderly people. So you have to be like 50 or 55 plus. And I was like, we got a long way to go.
Yeah.
I was like, my husband is 10 years older than me, but even that, I was like, that's still like a long way
You're
to
not there
go.
yet,
Yeah.
sir.
And so I was like, Thailand is just not an option because I was like, they
Yeah.
legitimately don't have visas. So they only just released a visa this, like, literally this week that
Oh
allows
my
people
God.
to like, you pay an amount and then you can get like 180 days and then you can renew it. And then it's valid for 5 years. And I was like, they finally, because I was like, there are so many people who want to live in like
Yeah.
Southeast Asia because it's so cheap. Like, nothing can compare. Like Mexico
Mm-hmm.
has been like a little bit more affordable than like Toronto, but like
Yeah.
nothing compares to how freaking cheap Thailand is. Like I
I'm,
cannot even like bubble tea is $1. Okay, like everything is like dirt cheap
yeah.
there. So like I always say that like I was like if Thailand comes up with anything, like I'd be
Mm-hmm.
happy to entertain it, or like I'd be happy to entertain Europe. But it's like it's the long term part. That's why so many people are
Yeah.
just digital nomads. It's because they can just hop around and they just jump from country to country because they can just go on tourist visas. But the second you want to stay somewhere longer, you need
Mm-hmm.
to have like some sort of visa or something that like allows you to stay longer. Yeah.
And you said that you've lived in Thailand or like Southeast Asia, and then
Hmm.
also now you're in Mexico. Are there,
Yeah.
and you kind of hinted at Europe, but are there any other places in the world that you would like love to live in?
Yeah, we're really entertaining Europe. It's funny because, like we said, we'd be in Mexico for like a year, but now we're starting to get bored. And I was like, I can't believe that, like, because like when I think about the logistics of like how much work it is to like travel with our daughter, because like she's
Mm-hmm.
almost 4, but like so now she's like getting to that age where she's supposed to be in school. So then I
Mm-hmm.
was like, oh, I don't really want to be one of those like world school people. So I'm always like, there needs to be somewhere where she can go to school
Yeah.
and learn. Like,
Mm-hmm.
obviously like JK is not mandatory in Canada, so like I'm
Right.
not like dying about it, and like my background is in education, so like I could hypothetically
Totally.
teach her to an extent, but like that's always something that's like in my head. But I'm dying to get to Europe because my husband and I
Mm-hmm.
have traveled to Europe, but we haven't done like Spain and Portugal, which are like two very popular like long-term digital nomad spaces. And so I'm like dying to go there. So now we're kind of talking like, okay, maybe like when this 1 year in Mexico is up, maybe we should try Europe and just see what it's like. So I think that's probably where we're heading next. I want to say next year, like, because the idea of like packing everything, because that's the thing too, is it's
Yeah, it's
like
a
you never
lot.
know how much stuff to accumulate if you know you're gonna move. So like for
So
us, it's
fair.
not a big deal. Like even coming to Mexico, like we came with like as little as possible, but at the same time, because I have a kid, it's like it means I have to buy toys for her, and like some of those
Yeah.
toys like can't travel every time we move, right? So it's like some of those
Yeah.
things, it's like makes you want to stay put longer. Um, but I would say Europe is definitely next. I really want to check out Portugal and Spain. We've
Yeah.
already done like Italy, Greece, France, and England, so like those are whatever. Um, but I would say Italy or Spain or Portugal for sure I would check out again like long term, or
Mhm.
maybe more like Eastern Europe. Because like I feel like
Okay.
there's like a lot of those smaller countries that are
Yeah.
not as popular, but would just be cool to be like, I've been to Estonia. I don't know anybody who's been there
Yeah.
before, you know?
That's
So
so
like,
fair.
yeah. So I think I would love to like check some of those countries out just to like see, but
Hmm.
I don't know if I'd want to live necessarily in those Eastern European countries. I just think it might be like too much language barrier and like trying to find education
Yeah.
and stuff.
That's
But
fair.
I'm like very easygoing. At the end of the day, it's me that ends up planning it all anyway. So it's
Yeah. That's
wherever you
amazing.
want, dear, we'll go. So
I love
yeah.
that. I've been to Spain, and then my partner's been to Spain and Portugal, and he said he loved Portugal a little bit more than Spain. But like when I went to Spain, I was like, this is it. I've also been throughout Europe, and it's
Yeah.
one of my favorites. It's just I don't know what it is. Like the food is great, the people are so
Yeah.
kind, and the weather's good there too.
Yeah. That's like a big selling feature. It's like, and that's the thing. It's now like we don't really want to be in Canada in the winter. So I'm like, even if we don't stay long term in one country, I think like 6 months away from Canada has to be mandatory because it's just
Yeah.
once you escape the winter once, you just like can't go back. It's just so
It's
hard.
so fair. No, it's really fair. I've been thinking about that too. And now that the seed is sort of planted, like you said, like your husband,
Yeah.
it's like I can't not think about it.
Yeah, it wasn't until like we went back and my poor daughter was like, it's so cold. And like my husband
Yeah.
is of Russian descent. So like thankfully he
Oh my
doesn't
God.
mind the cold and my daughter
Yeah.
doesn't mind the cold. But like
It's
it's like the
cold.
bundling up. Like I'm willing to go
Uh,
for Christmas, like for a couple weeks, but that I think
yeah,
that's
that's
my
it.
max. Yeah.
No, I
Head out
so
after.
agree. Yeah. So when you were living in Southeast Asia, you said that you took 6 months off from work. So can you talk about how it felt to return back to work? And you said you
Yeah.
kind of had to rebuild your agency because a lot of your
Yeah.
clients didn't think it was a great fit to have such a different time zone when you were in Southeast Asia.
Yeah, yeah. So I basically 1 month before we came back, I started looking for work again, knowing that like it might take some time. I managed
Hmm.
to land one client like when we were still in Bali, like just ready to come back to Toronto. So that was like perfect because that was like a bigger contract that I was like, okay, like this will pay the mortgage when we get back home.
Yeah.
So it's like great. But yeah, it was really hard to just kind of like start everything from scratch again. And I was like, again, like kind of panicking because I don't really like using too much of my savings. It was
Hmm.
great. Hindsight is 2020 because like the whole point of money is to spend it and enjoy your life. So it was good. Like I don't regret it at all. But like from a business perspective, I was like, oh, like I was like, I just want to get back into it. And it's also just like, what am I doing with my time? Right. So it's like when you're so used to working, it's like, what else can you do with your day?
Yeah.
So I was like ready to like just get back into work and like start helping people. Like I'm a natural born helper. And so like that's kind of what I love about being a VA is like helping the other clients. And so I just like went gung ho on like trying to find work. Every day I was out there searching for new clients and connecting with old clients, being like, hey, do you know anybody who needs a VA? And it worked out because basically the first month I came back, I had already signed a couple of clients. And so I was
That's
like ready
great.
to go. And so now I'm realizing now that I've built like my agency, like I don't have to be in the client work so much that I
Hmm.
still have some clients that I do the work for, but I now have a team that helps me and does work on behalf of the clients. And so now I'm realizing that like somewhere like Southeast Asia is more of a possibility now because I don't have to worry about a time zone as much because I've kind of scaled my business a little bit to have people who help me, which is great.
Right. Yes, well, that ties into my next question. I was going to
Oh,
ask you, can you talk about the building your micro agency
okay.
of virtual assistants and how that has all come to be?
Yeah, yeah. So that's a funny one. At the end of last year, I was basically like, yeah, I'm doing so good bringing all these clients. And I was like bringing all these clients and doing all the work. But then I was like, oh my gosh, like I don't have enough hours in the day to do all this work. So now I'm burnt out. And I was just like, you know
Yeah.
what? Like, I was like, I'm just going to get rid of all the clients who I don't vibe with and like who I'm just like, I don't feel like doing the work for you anymore. And I'm just going to like focus on the ones that I do like and find a new path for my business. I was like, I don't know what the next step is going to be, but I'm going to try. I was like, maybe I become a coach, maybe I become an agency. I was like, I don't know, but I'm just starting new. And so that's how like January started with the word relax, is because I was literally burnt out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't realize that like relax was not the right choice of words.
Yeah.
I have been relaxed. It hasn't been too stressful, but
Yeah.
I made the decision to build an agency instead. So that just means that like I'm the face behind the VA Success by Ness, the company. But I now have VAs who I subcontract and I bring on to help me with the work. So I
Right.
basically bring on a new client and I pair them off with one of my VAs. And so the VAs are now doing the work for the clients.
Hmm.
Um, a lot of people are like, well, how can you find people that you trust? And like, how can they do the work that's as good as you? And I say, it takes time. It took time for me to
Yeah.
find these VAs. I obviously had to like, now I'm the one who has to interview and like go through the
Yeah.
prospects and stuff. So that was great in the sense that like, there were lots of different people who were good candidates, but then I had to like decide which one like felt most aligned with the type of work that I do, felt like I would get along with really well. And so I brought on my first VA, then a second VA. And so now I have four VAs that work with me. But they're all people that like I feel confident can do the work on my
Yeah.
behalf. And so that's like a
Hmm.
really big thing. It's like very hard to like find somebody. People are always like, well, how do you know? And I was like, I just know. Like there was a vibe.
Hmm.
I chatted with them multiple times. They were able to like, go through all the processes and stuff. And they have a different understanding of like various programs that our clients use and stuff like that. So for me, it was like a lot of just back and forth trying to find what would
Yeah.
work best for me. And then also just working with like other people who also have agencies and like, hiring a coach was another thing that I decided to do to kind of help me grow the business. Because I was like, listen, like I'm going all in on this now, but I was like, I need some support along the way. I need
Yeah.
guidance, etc. So that's how I am now that I have, there's
Love
five
that.
of us basically.
Wow.
Um,
Congratulations. That's
yeah,
amazing.
it's been good. And it also meant that I also needed to bring on support from my own business. So now I also have
Hmm.
an operations assistant. And she helps me with things within my business. So it's like one of those things that everybody always talks about, like helping their own clients, and they don't focus on
Yeah.
themselves because they're too busy doing the client work. So I
Yeah.
eventually had to bring on somebody else onto my team to help me with like the day to day and just helping me keep things on track and like the back end of my business. So I also have a support person within
Yeah.
my
It's like
own
full
business.
circle.
Yeah, it was like so funny to like do that. And it ended up being like one of the girls who is my very first VA is actually the girl who works within my company as my
Wow.
operations assistant, because like I was like, I forgot that she had like an operations background and she's just like so knowledgeable. And I was like, you're my person.
I
I was
love
like, you're
that.
my first person, but I was like, you're my actual person for like my business.
Yeah.
So like she helps me like making sure that like my processes are in order, and like she's eventually going to start helping more with like onboarding and offboarding. And so it's been great to like
Yeah.
be able to now be like take my own advice
Yeah. Seriously.
and bring someone on like a full circle for sure.
So you mentioned that you have reached out and now have a coach to help you as well, or maybe
Hmm.
when you were building the business.
Hmm.
But I want to know how you still keep that passion for like learning new skills, specifically with building an agency, or just also ensuring that you're not getting bored, but also managing those demands of now you are running an agency.
That is a very timely question, because I felt this past week was like, I was just like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, you know, that like self-doubt
Yeah.
and like imposter
Yes.
syndrome. That was literally me this week. Like, I had such a calm week, but I was just like, oh, I was like, I don't know. What am I doing with myself? Like, what am I doing with this business?
Yeah.
And funny enough, like I always say now that like post COVID, I'm very introverted. And I think that's just because like after COVID, I never had to
Yeah.
go out to work. Like I
It's
stayed in my
so
house and
fair.
everything is virtual. But I started going out and like meeting people here in Mexico in Playa del Carmen. And I actually met up with a couple people who also have agencies, two girls with marketing agency, one with a copywriting agency. And so we've actually been getting together in like a mini mastermind on
That's
Fridays
great.
and just talking about everything business. And those girls have really helped me like feel more in tune with my business and like remind me
Hmm.
that like I'm the one who's in charge. So like if you want more
Yeah.
clients, you have to go get them. If you want to relax, it's okay to relax. If you want to pivot, it's
Hmm.
okay to pivot. And so I think between having a coach and having like this ability to like chat with people in real life has really helped me like feel more confident. Like, and it's funny because like this, I was saying like this week, I was like, oh, I don't know, but I met with one girl here for lunch yesterday, and that literally made me like come home and be like more gung-ho about my business again, because
Yeah.
I was just feeling, I was like, I don't know, I was like, I feel like I'm in a rut. She's like, maybe you need a vacation. And I was like, maybe I do. And she's like,
Yeah.
I also think you need like a new strategy. And I was like, I was like, I think you might be right. And so that was like me, like literally last night I was like writing stuff down like way late into the night, and this
But
morning I
that's
jumped.
being re-inspired. That's so
Yeah, and that was
great. Yeah.
exactly it. And so this morning again, I like jumped into my laptop and I like even pulled out like a notebook and I was like jotting all these
That's
things
awesome.
down. And I was like, oh, I was like, this is just the inspiration I needed. And so
Yeah.
I think there's definitely like ups and downs with running a business as a whole, or just like in life. Even if you don't run your own business and you work, there's still life ruts. And so I definitely think that that's been like a big part of it. It's just like me finding some inspiration again.
Hmm.
And also taking a vacation. So we are
Yeah.
we're planning to go to Mexico City next month, actually, because
That's
I was like, I need to
awesome.
do something. I was like, I need a change. I was like, I'm bored, and it's so funny because like
Yeah.
everyone's like, oh, your life is so great. I'm just like, yeah. I was like, I need something different. I'm
Yeah.
like, we've been doing this for 3 months now. I was like, I need a change.
So fair. That's definitely fair.
Yeah.
So that also ties into my next question of what are your aspirations, or like where do you see Success by Ness going in the future?
Yeah, I don't know. For some reason, I guess when I started my agency, I always imagined I had this number of like seven, like being a team of
Okay.
seven in my head. So I don't know. I feel like being a team of seven is like some subconscious goal that I created.
Yeah.
I don't know where the number came from, but like I don't know. I just have that. I feel like seven team members seems like a good number, where it's like not like
Hmm.
thousands of people in this agency, but not like micro agencies.
It's
So I
not
think
just
like
you. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So I think like having a team of seven seems to be like my special number. And I definitely just think for me, one of the other big things was like coming out of the client work a bit. And so I've
Mm,
slowly been doing that. But I'm like, if I'm coming out of the client work, I still need to find something else to do with my time. And so
yeah.
definitely meeting new people and networking and socializing is definitely something that is good for me in terms of like just personality and helping me to get out there. But in turn, like I've realized now helps me grow the business in a sense, because I always seem to just randomly meet somebody who's like, oh, you're a VA? Like, oh, I could actually use some admin support. And so it's working out in my favor to like
Hmm.
actually go out there and just like meet new people and just be social. So
Yeah.
definitely something that I'm working on now. It's just like Success by Ness needs to be more out there and more social.
Great. Well, it's perfect that you're on here today too, because who knows, maybe listeners are in need of some virtual assisting support, or they're
There you
just
go.
interested in the field too. So
Yeah,
it's like
love
perfect.
that. Yeah.
So before we wrap up, I want you to have the floor to share where everyone can find you. So if you want to promote your socials, your website, any of your offerings.
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at Success by Ness. You can also find me on LinkedIn at Shaughnessy King is my LinkedIn name. I also have a LinkedIn page. It's also called Success by Ness, which is the name of my virtual assistant agency. My website is successbyness.com. It's all
Love
things
it.
Success by Ness. You could probably just Google Success by Ness and you would just like, it'll just show you everything. And yeah, I provide administrative admin support for virtual people who need kind of virtual support. If you're thinking about maybe you have some emails that you just like, I've literally had somebody who had 20,000 emails in their inbox and just needed that cleared out. It took a while. It took a long time, but you never know what kind of admin support you might need. We also do anything that falls under that umbrella of administrative support. So we also have people who have online courses and maybe they have a course community that needs moderating. We have people who sometimes are creating a course and they need some support with like uploading those videos. Anything like that we can help with. If you have meetings that you need scheduled or anything like that, we are happy to help you.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much, Shaughnessy, for joining us today. I loved our discussion. It was a little bit of, it was like perfect work and life balance,
Yeah.
Yeah, it was awesome. So thank you so much. And to any listeners, definitely check out Shaughnessy if you're interested in virtual assisting or just that industry, but also if you want to learn how to live abroad. I think that that's also so interesting
I
and
do
incredible.
tackle like a little bit of both on my social media, like on my
Yeah,
Instagram page. It's like a combo of like VA life and like traveling life. So
it's
you'll
so
get a little bit
different.
of both. Yeah.
I've never seen anything before like it, so I'm always interested to see what you're posting.
Love it. Appreciate it, Juliana. And thanks for taking the time to chat with me today.